what I'd like to do is address, am I doing this right? I'd like to address an existential gut level concern that many people are having in this world now, okay? First of all, there's always a personal aspect to everything, and so the intensification of trouble and bad times is becoming more and more ingrained in the vision or the view scope of the world that people have. They see the world as full of suffering and horrors, injustice, imbalance, all kinds of possible high government corruption, things of that nature. They feel that their lives, and they're not in control of their lives. Their lives do not belong to them and can be snuffed out easily through some kind of calamity, whether it be in a nuclear war, or it's simply the result of the arrogance and negligence of our species against Mother Nature, who will just crush us, just dissolve us in calamities and giant storms and things like that. Most of the human race could be wiped out. So here is all that, along with every bad political piece of news and all the internecine relationship between, you know, the liberals and the Foxes, you know what I mean, the Fox News, the ongoing, all you feel like is all they feel like is a a tennis ball going back and forth. If they try to be objective, they keep finding fault with both sides, and that's an accurate thing to happen, because all these systems are run by people, and people by their nature are fundamentally selfish, and you put people into positions of power, power corrupts, as Lord Acton said, and therefore the whole thing goes to crap. I don't care if you're a socialist or if you're a fascist, it doesn't matter. Your system is going to become run by coercion. It's going to be run by, as Sartre called it, le terror, the terror, the coercion, fear. Because the government will crush you if you don't abide. Either government. If you go to a blackboard, as I would when I was teaching criminology, I would draw a line in the middle of the blackboard, and then I'd put a number of names strung out on the right, number of names strung out on the left. They would include people and systems and stuff like that. And eventually you come to fascism way off on the right, and you come to communism way off on the left. We all understand this, right? And you find people in varying degrees away from the center who gravitate towards these sides. But I will also point out to them it's a globe, and it goes all the way around. You can't tell the difference between one way of life and another way of life, because Nazi Germany was called a socialism, and basically it was just an oligarchy. It was Hitler with 99% of the power, but then he had his minions. He had people of great wealth who really did very well during the war. IG Farben, I don't need to go into it. Volkswagen, all those people where they manufactured, of course. And on the other side, of course, you had Stalin, who killed maybe as many as 60 million of his own people, certainly 40. Starved 3 million people in the Ukraine one year, starved them to death. He wouldn't allow food or heat or anything to go in. Starved, killed so many of them. Ukrainians are pretty smart, and they didn't like them. Too bad for you. You don't get to eat, and you don't get to heat yourself against the Russian winter. The Russian winter. And so he just did away with them. So you got monsters on both sides. And if you look at these systems that people fight between, they're going to find unsavory characters. And if you think they're not unsavory, ask yourself the simple question, why are they seeking power? Okay. That's just in general. But then you've got this, your own personal, fundamental, existential, embodied life that you have to deal with. Besides all these enormities that are beyond your control, you have relationships, and your relationships disappoint you. Somebody recently said to me, oh, the two things always of certainty, death and taxes. I said, no, there's one more, disappointment. Am I wrong? the human species. I mean, even if you've got $60 billion, you're still going to find something to be disappointed at. And all you've got to do is look at television, look at something like this new series called Succession. Brian Cox is he's like he's a powerful magnate, billionaire, and he runs news corporations and stuff like that. And it's all about him and his family. It's rather entertaining because the dynamics are just brutal. They're amazing. And so here are these people who are just fundamentally driven and unhappy for the most part, except for the pretty redhead who's always got some kind of smirky smile on her face. She's terrific. Sarah Snook. She's kind of new and she plays her role great. And she's kind of like an emblem of the madness of the family. She's like the clouds in the sky. Her various expressions, I think she's the emblem of the family. So, and they're all miserable. Even the old man, and there's all miserable stuff that goes on, all embodied miserable stuff, like dead raccoons in the chimney, stinking up this $200 million mansion that he just had built. So it's gut level existential stuff, even though, people think, well, you got billions and billions of dollars, that makes you happy. Not even close. And so this poor guy that I know, if I can get down to the real gist of all of this, I don't know, he's a former student, he's in his early 60s, just lost his wife. He was a bright guy and sensitive, and he always had these issues looking into things, and I guess he had a kind of dark soul. I don't know why, I don't know his background. But he was a good guy and smart and sensitive, and then he lived his life, and I just reconnected with him, and he's now a widower, but even worse than that, one of his sons lost his girlfriend, and because of his own problematic life, ended it. And so now this guy is talking to me about things that seem to be like waves of argumentation in favor of him committing suicide. So suddenly I've got a thing in my lap of a guy who may commit suicide if I cannot talk him out of it in some way. I can't talk him out of it. There's nothing I can say. He understands. He said the species looks like it's doomed. The whole species, it's corrupt by its nature because he said it's always ego bound. No, even the best people are bound by self-image and relationship to the eyes of the other. Now, he understands about this stuff. He did some reading in existentialism, so he understands to a good extent. And so I can't reveal something brand new to him in that. The only other time that I was able to convince a couple of people not to commit suicide many years ago was with the argument when I said, why bother? I mean, if it's really that bad, just be in a dream with it and just watch it. It'll kill you soon enough. Don't bother to kill yourself. I mean, really, if you're that really bored with it and you find it so distasteful, but this guy would not respond to that because basically he feels the suffering. It's almost like a physical pain. So, give me an answer. Tell me how to fix them.
Yeah. I got nothing.
No.
Nothing.
I'm sorry, Jake.
Yeah.
You're dead. I don't know what to tell him.
Yeah. I mean, I've been in a practice for a little bit now of doing a gratitude journal for the small things that I can appreciate in life.
Very good.
It definitely is something that I recommend a lot of high anxiety people do, because it's been shown to produce hormones that help deal with stress. Just finding anything to be appreciative of is probably the only thing that I could suggest being in nature for a while and just getting away from everything that seems to be a stressor, like you had mentioned, looking at society for what it is.
I fully agree with you. I think what you're basically saying is when you lose something, and we're always losing something, when you lose something, you can just try to grit it out and accept the pain. But it would also be a good idea to try to substitute something for that something. Am I
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Replace it with something positive.
I think being in the echo chamber for a while can only lead to circular thought. If you can't at least be in a neutral area like the woods, that's something I can consider pretty neutral.
Yeah. May I speak dogmatically about the woods? I taught, in Johnston High for a long time, and I found as I got older, the stress was greater and greater, even though I would go days and days without any conflict.
Yeah.
I had nice classes in psych and
Mm.
philosophy sometimes, but even the slightest thing would bother me more and more. You get older, all your hormones change, you've been conditioned to be, I call it the death of 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
Because, there'll be kids who'll hate you for no reason except for the same reason that other kids will love you.
Mm.
You're somebody's daddy,
Mm.
and therefore you are assailable. They call it in education local parentis, which means the parent on the premises. You're that, and you certainly are that because of transference. Kids transfer from their parents on you all the time, and many of them, they never can do anything against their parents.
Mm.
Therefore, you catch what they can't do to the parents.
Mm.
And at the very least, they give you vibrations of hatred, and you know it, especially when you're teaching junior high. And if you think it doesn't affect you, you're not tuned in. It affects you.
So in my work, coaching people, I got the criticism that I'm too friendly a couple weeks back, that I'm too much of a friend. I'm not scary enough to intimidate people into doing things.
Well, that's why I keep telling you I want to give you a stick.
Yeah, well, to which I responded, okay.
A bamboo stick or a switch. Can you get your hands on a switch? Like what do you call the riding crop that the
Yeah.
officers used to carry and smack people with?
Yeah, I think one step up, I'll get the electrical
Oh,
prod.
no, this is just symbolic. You don't want to hit your people for. I never really meant for you to hit them or hurt them, but electrical prod would.
Yeah, it's
just get the stick.
it's interesting. I don't think a lot of people understand anything about transactional analysis.
Oh,
I don't think they understand that they may sit on the hierarchy somewhere and in relation to other people, all the time.
I had some fun in transactional analysis when I was teaching it to the kids. One of the assignments I would give them was, after I taught them about parent, adult, and child ego states and all their separate parts, because each one is made of 3,
Mhm.
so you have 9. But I gave them an assignment. Many of them did it. Go to your other classes and just have your notebook open, and just every time you hear something come from one of the 3, just mark off PAC, mark off, and then just how many do you get? And most of them were quite accurate. They realized that some of the teachers, there was Mrs. Lynn, who was a very motherly type. She was very kind to the kids, a math teacher. And she was always parent, but it was a positive parent, not the condemning, negative parent. And, giving solace and comfort and help. And a great teacher, no doubt. But there was always one kid who saw opposite of what the other kids saw. He saw the negative parent instead of the child or things like that. Yeah, there's always a kid that's the view scope. There are no view scopes that are uncolored. And the color comes from your conditioning in combination with your DNA.
Here's an interesting one that I've come across. adults that want to still be children by deferring responsibility and and implicating the parent. To which I respond, basically a big F you to them. I'm not your parent. You have to take responsibility for yourself. I can show you how you need to do that from my perspective. That's been a conversation for the last couple of weeks with a couple of my clients because they want me to have every answer to every problem for them.
Do you lose any of them as a result of
No.
this? No.
I have a good relationship with. I do my best to be neutral with them. When I believe I'm correct about something, I will state it as I believe I'm correct about something. But I'm open to being critiqued on any of my theories on stuff. But when I see somebody struggling with the same thing dozens of times in a row, I get forceful about things. And it's usually something like very basic health benefit, like you still need to take care of yourself in this way. It's usually something like that. And they don't want to. They just try to avoid it because it's a burden at the beginning, which is why I'm so much about habit formation and the thing about becoming more and more unconscious as we get older, right? We're ingrained in our habits as time goes on, and our ability to read reality for what it is gets, I think, more and more skewed over time. And that's every time I ask you about the discussion about free will, I mean, that's what I'm looking at. I feel like maybe like a baby is the only thing that has free will, perhaps like right when it's born.
I think it's actually a term without real meaning at this point. As you know, I was a champion of free will after I got out of graduate school the first time. I had studied existentialism and determinism under the guise of psychological behaviorism by Skinner and those people had abrogated the idea of free will. And there's no such thing as free will. He wrote a book called Beyond Freedom and Dignity, meaning no freedom, no free will, and therefore no self, no merit. Because you think you're something special because you are a being of free will and all that. No, you're just another machine, thoroughly programmed was the version of it. And so I was still looking at the existential being, and therefore I had to try to promote the idea of free will. And since then, that free will concept of mine, as sophisticated as it was, best as it was, has been put in the crucible and boiled and boiled and boiled all these years. And what I've come out to now is something much closer to what Krishnamurti said. He said, you wrote a book called You Are the World. And he just shows you that everything everybody else does is all part of us. I don't want to go into an attempt at explaining all this, but he's worth reading. And we all, some of us know this, that this sense of separation that we have is no more of a sense of, no more real separation than a bunch of molecules in relationship to one another in a free-floating vacuum.
Right.
We're floating in the vacuum, and everything that we do here has an effect of something way out there, as tiny as it is. So you don't even know what cause and effect is anymore. You don't know which comes first.
Right.
So, again, I mean, I just had to look at it.
Yeah.
You know, I know a lot of people, oh, free will and we're not machines and all this. Well, take a damn good look at what we're doing to ourselves and what people do to themselves on a very personal scale. I hope I don't offend anybody, but I'm going to say something. Back when I was a kid and TV was first introduced into our home, 1952, I was 13 when we got our first black and white RCA. Oh, I lived high. We lived big. Very poor. They had Saturday morning cartoons, and there would be Hopalong Cassidy and the cops, the Jamie crazy cops, and then they had a family of morbidly obese people called the Tons of Funds. They were ridiculed, of course, and they had all these very crushed things sitting down and all that. It was all black and white, it was terrible grainy and all that, but that was supposed to be so unusual that it was so unique at that point. It was unique and therefore hilarious that it could be that way. Now we know it better. My mother, who used to visit down in North Carolina in Asheville, where her sister owned a mountain, my aunt owned a mountain, used to go into Asheville, and she said, I never saw so many people. They have to turn sideways when they go through a door. And then I found out later that there are 3 great fat farms down there. These people are there to be fixed, to be helped, you see? So yes, they would be a concentration of them, but it's not unusual to see people
Right.
enormous, and that's mostly due to bad eating.
It's the habit of it, right? The habit formation of and it's one of those things like chicken or the egg, like you were saying, which came first. But there's a highly palatable food that is calorically dense. You overeat it. You eat in great abundance. You eat nothing but plain food. You definitely don't overeat. You try to eat chicken and broccoli in great abundance. There's no way you're hitting your calories for the day. So it's one of
I
those
just
things.
did
It's
that,
just
as a matter of fact.
it's one, and that and we can go into the perverseness of the things that I imply people to do, such as, oh, you don't want to do it, just freaking do that, will you? Like, just do it. You know it's good for you. Just do it. Do it for enough days that it becomes a habit, and realize that that habit that you did caused this effect. Wake up to it in some way. Realize that eating a piece of candy every hour on the hour is probably killing you, especially when you're sitting at a desk 9 to 5 every day. It's that sort of thing. But they have, there's the candy jar sitting on the edge of the desk, and every time you walk by the secretary or whomever may have it, you pick one up. And it's just this little habit formation, this terrible stimulus in the guise of something delicious and rewarding for a split second that is nothing but an indulgence that will tear you down.
And you and I both knew somebody quite closely who could not ever pass up an opportunity for pleasure. Okay? I know that person suffered from a profound sense of insignificance. What's the reason your people, and every time you talk to me about your people, I keep having these visions of you with a big bamboo stick.
I run a room in hell. That's my job.
For them.
Here on Earth.
For them.
Yeah, I'm the gateway to hell.
And then you make them lift up heavy things.
And they pay me for it. Voluntarily.
Well, what you got to do is you got to say a prayer to the patron saint of masochists.
Yeah, I was actually told that I should just go right into S&M. That I should just transition. I'd probably make more money quicker, just beating people up that ask for it.
I know, but what you need as an accomplice is a beautiful black-haired female, voluptuous, who wears all kinds of leather underwear and who really likes the idea of jumping up and down on the backs of people with those spiked heels.
Yeah.
And the
I bet I could start a great business in Providence.
you might get
if there isn't already one.
This is being recorded, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry. We're on record, the evidence. You were going to talk about something else. Why don't you get into that?
I had just opened up when we met today that I had been watching a show that I thought encompasses a lot of the concepts that we discussed, including immortality. And the show is Altered Carbon, which I've been watching every couple of nights. I'll catch an episode. But basically, it takes place in the future, some odd years in the future. This mercenary type character wakes up. There's a big shootout over these discs, and you come to find out that the discs house consciousness. And they found out technology, I think it's about 150 years in the future, they found a way to basically immortalize humans, and so that a human can transfer bodies over time. And the disc is housed in the back of your cervical spine. Your body breaks, you get killed. As long as the disc doesn't break, you're fine. You go to a new body. It may take time. You may have to rent a body. There's all kinds of things with cloning in the future and how expensive it is. And I think they're trying to legislate it or something. I can't remember from the show. But there's just so many concepts. This is, including, if you had the chance to immortalize yourself, would you? And why? And why not? And what new level of suffering awaits in the future that you will not die? Boredom. I think it was one of the first ones that they deal with, where people are just so full of themselves they cannot connect. They feel no connection whatsoever. The higher society that they show in the show is.
And therefore, what do they do as a compensation for this terrible in-depth boredom? What do they resort to?
As far as they just utilize everybody.
So in other words, this is just a continuation of the archetype that I developed in Narcissus and the Vampire Myth.
Yeah.
It's the vampire syndrome, and
Yeah.
it's, I explained it very thoroughly in my book. Read the book.
Yeah, there's a
if
plug
it
for the
comes
book.
out. But, it's not available unless I give it to you on a
Yep.
disc or something.
That means we
like
have to do that.
But, as I hear it, I think, how could it possibly work? You see, consciousness is not understood. You can read all the great geniuses, and every once in a while, one of them will just openly state what they all really are implying, that consciousness cannot be truly explained in terms of mechanical processes. It doesn't matter how much you know about the physical side of the brain itself made of this stuff. You do not understand consciousness, which somehow seems to make itself separate and distinct from everything.
It's beyond our dimensional awareness.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
no way that we can house it. And I would say that that's absolutely. And I think within the puzzle that they present in the show, that would be the way out of that is I don't think there's a way to do that.
I can give them a way. If they inserted something into the basal here.
Yeah.
Is that what you call it?
I don't know.
And it's somehow capable of adapting to all physical aspects. It could become that. What did you call it that was inserted?
The disc.
The disc.
Mm.
It could become that disc. If it's capable of learning.
Mm.
In other words, not just a mechanical thing that's going to record, because all it'll do is record thoughts
Right.
and visions and what behaviors existed, but it will not capture the sentience, the
Yes.
feeling, the actual aliveness, the kinesthetic, I guess you want to call it, ultimately.
Mhm.
It can't capture that unless it's really capable of learning. It may evolve,
Mhm.
but that would require
living,
150 years of research by the greatest genius.